in the Gospels, in all of them, at different times, the expression comes up that Jesus summoned the 12 apostles and sent them out preaching. And I was wondering today how they felt when they went out. And they were ordinary men, fishermen, traders, a couple of them married. How did they feel? What would you feel like if your pastor said, now, next week I want you to give the sermon? Well, some people would jump at it. I think most people would say, well, I'm not going to be here next week. Were they frightened? Imagine the fear, the nervousness. It said Jesus sent them out in twos, are supposed to support one another. But it does say later, when they came back, they were really excited. They said, people listened to us. They couldn't believe it. But it was a big moment in their lives. The first time they went out preaching. Now, at this time of year, in the summer, it's a time when the big changes are coming in a lot of people's lives. Some are just finishing their exams. Some are leaving college. Some are preparing to go to college. Some are children going up to a new school or a new class. But also, often people are going to have to move house. I live in an island where a lot of people come on business, perhaps for a few years. One lovely family, they came just a year ago. But because his job has changed, oh no, they have to move off now. Another one has become ill, not too bad, getting better, but can't afford the medical thing in one place and has to go to another. For me, I'm what I call a Jesuit. I belong to a religious order, so I have a vow of obedience. And so that means that when I'm needed somewhere and the superior sends me, then I go. And we talk what are the pros and cons, but that's what it comes to. So people think, oh, well, I'm doing what the Lord wants of me. That's clear, isn't it? And they say, oh, but you have to go anywhere you're sent. I think, well, so do you. It may not be so clear that this is what the Lord is asking. In the Gospel, he sends them out preaching. This happens with the prophets in the Old Testament as well. They are sent. The way the Lord sends most of us is simply by accidents or things that come that we need in our lives. And for myself as well, if I am asked to move to another place, it's because of a practical need. Somebody's become ill, or they've taken on a new parish, or something like that comes up. So when people talk of a vow of obedience that I have, but you'd fulfill it in the same way, following what the Lord wants. One word they often use, and this comes across often, we talk about, do you have a vocation? And I was thinking about that. When I decided to be a priest, I never thought about a vocation. The word never occurred to me. It so happened I was brought up in a fairly religious family, with Catholics. My whole life centred a bit around the parish. I was in a school which was taught by priests, and I really wanted to follow our Lord, that's true. But it so happened the family could manage without me. I didn't need to start earning. I could go else. And so because of those things were possible, and I managed to pass an exam where I thought I was going to. And so these external circumstances are the way the Lord leads us and calls us. It's not so explicit as it seems to be in the Gospel, but this is the way the Lord is guiding. And often then people get this expression about doing the will of God. And that can be a very misleading expression. It's almost as if God has made up his mind what he wants you to do, and now you've got to try and see how you fit in with that. And he called it vocation. Almost as if God has written a play, and you're trying to decide what part you're meant to be taking. Is it as a teacher, or is it a refuse collector, Or is it a cleaner or a mother or father or different things? It doesn't work like that, as if God just makes up his mind. You live your life, but trying to be in harmony with Christ, walking with Christ. And that is what we mean by being called, walking with Christ. And he has a lovely image. He says, take your yoke and learn from me. You're yoked to Christ. If you were trying to plough a field with 2 oxen, I must admit I have never done that, and I don't suppose many of you have. But if you did, I imagine if the oxen are not joined together and tied together, it's going to be chaos. Whether the horses or oxen, they've got to be yoked, and they go together. And they don't look at each other, they're looking straight ahead. If they looked at each other, a bit like when you're driving, if you just look at your companion, it's going to be chaos. You look ahead. Doing the will of God is walking in harmony with Christ, looking in the same direction as Jesus. And he walks with me. Not that he's made up his mind, this is what you've got to do, this is what I have in mind. In fact, I think a wonderful image is of dancing. David Lonsdale wrote a book, Dancing in the Spirit, or with the Spirit. It's lovely. I don't mean ballroom dancing, where you have to get all the steps correct. Slow, quick, slow, don't tread on the other person's foot, your foot there, and so on. No. More like Top of the Pops, when they're all on the dance floor, and we're dancing and you choose your own steps, but in time with the music, and in harmony with the other people on the dance floor. I was with a group of Eritreans once, and there were 2 sisters. They weren't twins, but fantastic relationship. And in the end, we were just watching them dancing together. They could not only anticipate, they seemed to feel each other's body. They were yards apart, but somehow that great harmony together. And that's what I want with Christ, with God our Lord. To be in that, I can choose my own steps. You can decide, make your own decisions about your life. Obviously, I don't want to do something which takes me from Christ. A good job might be offered, but no, I know that firm is totally dishonest, so I'm not going to take that. So I try to live within the harmony with Christ, but choosing the way I go, and often that is forced on me by circumstances sometimes, and there's some little room for choice. There's a certain amount of choice. You know the expression, man proposes, God disposes. They only say that when everything seems to go wrong, or rather not as I planned. And I don't think it's exactly true. I propose to do certain things, and the Lord as well, and I want to do it in harmony with him. It doesn't always go the way I expect. There are accidents and things seem to go wrong. So many of the stories in the Bible show how everything goes wrong, and then gradually it leads to what is really good. Remember the story of Joseph in the Old Testament. His brothers hated him, they were so jealous, they tried to kill him, or in the end decided, worse than that, they sold him to slave traders. And he was taken off to Egypt. Absolute chaos, he was in prison, everything went wrong. And then it changed when there was a famine. He was a fantastic organizer, and he became the chief man in Egypt under Pharaoh. And then his brothers came, not knowing who he was, to buy food because their country was starving. And eventually they recognize each other, and he's in tears, and he hugs them and forgives all that had gone wrong. But if you stopped that story at the halfway through, it is just tragedy all gone wrong. And that's why so many things in our own lives, we say, but it's gone wrong. The Lord has forgotten. The Lord has abandoned us. Well, he hasn't. The Lord is still guiding. But I haven't yet seen the end of the story. One lovely image it helps me is looking at the tapestry. If you can see a beautiful tapestry, and it is wonderful and very beautiful, you turn around and look at the back, all the threads this way and that, chaos means nothing. That's my life, I think, sometimes. I'm looking at the back of the tapestry, and the day will come when the Lord will turn it round and say, oh, now I know, and did I see. But all the time, the Lord leading. And leading a bit like, have you ever used a sat-nav, or the Americans call it GPS, the thing you have in the car, and because of the rays or whatever they are from the satellites, it tells you the way to go. I nearly lost my faith the first time I used one. I know that God is guiding me, but the sat-nav seemed to know where I was as well. Anyway, got over that. And then you're going along, it will say, right, go straight for 2 miles. In 100 yards, turn left. When you get there, it says, now turn left. If you don't just go on, it doesn't say, oh, you idiot, I said turn left. It doesn't say, well, go back to where you were before and we'll start again. No, it just picks up where you are at that moment. You had gone wrong, but it'll lead you on from there to the place you wanted to go. And so often in my life, things have gone wrong and I've done it wrong, or something else has gone wrong. But never mind, the Lord doesn't forget that. The Lord doesn't say, oh, go back to where you were before, we can't go on like this. No, the Lord will lead me from this wrong place into the right direction. And so when things don't seem to go right, or not as I planned, when your children grow up and behave differently from what you've taught them, they find their own way to the Lord, choosing their steps, but in harmony with Christ. And sometimes not, and sometimes we don't. But the Lord picks us up there and leads in the direction we're going. Jesus sent them out for a new life. When new things are happening, the Lord hasn't lost the plot. And it isn't just coincidence or things falling apart or doing what is necessary. It is doing these in harmony with God. And this is the way the Lord sends me out. And He doesn't send me away, He walks with me. Pray that you will have this trust always that the Lord is walking with you. At the full tide of the day and at its ebbing, at the rising of the sun and at its setting, may the mighty God be with you, the loving God protect you, the holy God guide you.